Amber, I'm smiling really, really big and also giggling inside because I feel like the universe keeps getting in the way of us recording this episode, and I'm so glad that we are finally doing the thing. My love, how are you doing?
I'm good, and me too. I know, but it was meant to be, Melissa, because here
Totally.
we are.
Totally meant to be. What's lovely about our convo is that it's really just an extension of stuff that you and I have been talking about for months. And so when I felt led to, just really put a name on this series with why not, you are someone who's embodied this especially in the last year and even into this new year. And so this is a really inspiring, powerful, very relatable story, I think, for it doesn't matter whether you're a business owner, a performing artist, a fellow voice professional in any way, shape, or capacity. I love that people are going to get to hear your story. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it was great. You're right. You and I were just chatting, and then you were like, let's chat about this and share it with other people. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so I already bragged on you a bit in the show opener, but please tell us where you're from. Your part of your story is where you're calling home right now, what used to be home. You have a really interesting trajectory. So tell us a little bit about your artistic background, how you started singing and got into teaching as well.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm originally from a small town, like an hour outside of Kansas City, called Hamilton, Missouri. I mean, small town as in we have one flashing red light in our town. I graduated, I think, with 48 people, and people assume like, oh, so you went to private school, and I was like, no, that was public school, and it wasn't just my town, but it was like the neighboring towns that had like 500 people, or all of them came and graduated from my school too. So from a small town, ended up, oh my gosh, Melissa, can you hear my puppy barking?
No, but I was gonna say I also live in a flight path and they are really busy. So all ambient noise is welcome today in this episode.
Okay, I'm so sorry. She's out the door like,
No, no,
so,
no.
and but
Chiming
so
into.
sorry.
Okay,
Oh,
no, go for it.
yeah. Okay, good. Well, yeah. So from small town Hamilton, Missouri. So not too far. I always just tell people Kansas City, but tiny little town. I started performing I'll fast forward, don't worry. But I mean, when I was just little bitty, like kindergarten, I was in productions and taking dance and doing piano and all of that. And I probably started, I think maybe I got my first paid performance probably around 10. There's a theater in Kansas City called Starlight Theater. So I was in The Music Man was my first one there. And obviously parents who were kind enough to cart me everywhere because I couldn't take myself. And I did the part of being in small town Missouri too is I did the whole county fair circuit. So that was a big stomping ground for me. I know. So I ended up then, I knew I wanted to go to school for music, but just where I'm from, and I was the first one in my family to go to college, and you don't just go off to music school. So I got a full scholarship in academics and classical voice to go to the University of Missouri. So I went for 2 years, I know, and studied classical voice. And I mean, I had a blast. I have so many great friends from there. Too much fun, probably, but as much as I loved the people I was working with, and it was a great choral director I got to work with, and I loved learning it, I still would come back to my dorm room and listen to all the more, pop music, rock music, soul, R&B, country, and work through all of those. And I just, finally told my parents, I have huge appreciation for it. This is not the kind of music that speaks to me. I want to do commercial music. So I looked at, LA and New York and all the places I thought I should go. And I'm a huge Bonnie Raitt fan. And this is a true story. I auditioned in Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York, and was from small town Missouri, and was making my decision. And I got a mailer from Berklee College of Music in Boston, which is a fantastic school, but I'd never heard of it where I'm from. And I just saw that Bonnie Raitt gave the honorary doctorate. So I was like, blinders, nothing else exists. I must go where Bonnie Raitt gave a speech at the graduation. So I went to Berkeley and I performed a lot. I performed in an acoustic trio and traveled around the Northeast for a couple of years after graduating from Berkeley. I was really wanting to be a singer-songwriter at that point. So I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where I was for 24 years. I just moved out of Nashville. That's what you were kind of alluding to.
Ah.
24 years. If you start to do math, you can put my age together. But um, and it was great. I mean, I did some work with Sony Tree while I was in Nashville. I released a couple EPs. I hosted an internationally televised show on CMT, which is crazy to think of now, but country music television. I did lots of great stuff and was there as a performer. And I always taught though. I always like, I'm going to guess you're similar, Melissa, just from our conversations. But even when I was in lessons or when I was doing stuff, I was always trying to like kind of reverse engineer. How did I get that? Why did that work?
Mm.
I always taught. And I'll fast forward again. I had a kiddo who is now 19. We now have 3 kids. And I'd never thought about it before. Nobody had ever said to me, like, hey, Amber, you love music. You want to work in this, but you don't just have to get a record label and tour. That isn't the only option, but that's the only option I knew of that existed, really. And, or at least in my mind. And I'd made every decision based on that. And then I had my daughter and I had this like, oh yeah, I don't want to be gone from her. I also was always a person who was like, oh, I love to go out and play shows, but I like to be home. Just I'd never put those things together. And that's when I realized like I love this so much, but I started to transition to teaching more and honestly love it even more. I mean, I love performing, but I would have so many people that would say to me, how does it feel to not, now that you're a teacher, do you just miss it so much? And I still perform and do things and I have, but I was like, no, I get such a like, I just fell in love with it. So I'm rambling, Melissa. I started Nashville Vocal Studio in Nashville, and we were down in Music Row, and we were there for over a decade. And COVID hit, everything shifted, moved online, and the silver lining of that is that we found out this summer my husband got a job in Denver, Colorado, which we love Denver, but he found out, and within 4 weeks we picked up from where we'd lived for 24 years, where I was very established as Nashville Vocal Studio and as an artist and just person myself, and we now live in Denver.
My goodness gracious. Wow. What
I
a
was like, how do
journey.
I pack it in and not like make you like
No, not at all. I'm just smiling so big because I know we share so many things in common, and I know my listeners actually probably share very many things in common. I mean, just going back to I thought this was going to be the dream, this was going to be the career, or the only path for me as a singer, which at the time in academia was studying classical music. I am a fellow classically trained singer too. But knowing that there's this other facet of our musicality that we love so much, that resonates with us so much. And then I think, as I've, gotten to know you, other colleagues, other friends, I feel like it's been our own way of saying, well, why not? Like you said, reverse engineer everything I've learned. Why can't I tell somebody else about this too? What's going on in their brains and their voices? Let's have this conversation. And I love that it really has been this exploration process. And I think you were just like, here's a door, let me walk through it, let's see what happens. You know what, but I really like this too. And I love that it's not either or, it's both and. It seems
yeah.
like, in your life and in your career. And I love that. Especially I totally relate to being a working mom, and that's really how I set my foot into voice teaching more on a regular basis too. Was that gave me the flexibility to do that. And so, I mean, gosh, somebody may be listening to this on the verge of a huge like geographical shift. So let's just start there, because I mean, when people hear Nashville, there's a level of being that's pretty lucrative, you know, to say I'm Nashville Vocal Studio or I work in Nashville or I work with Nashville artists, especially when you are a popular or contemporary singer. Um, was there I mean, was there any internal turmoil with the decision of geographically leaving that behind? Because now your voice studio, your business is no longer, that's not the official title anymore, right? You even had a name change that went with that.
I did a name change. I'll tell you in all honesty, I was thinking about a name change since probably 2020. The
Mm,
reason I hadn't done, even though, I mean, I wasn't planning on leaving Nashville, but I think it's that my studio, when I named it Nashville Vocal Studio, and still I work with so many folks in Nashville. I fly back and work with them in person, and obviously I've been there for so long. Um, but I started working with artists outside of Nashville, artists like I know you do, genuinely all over the world. So I
mhm.
thought it's Nashville Vocal Studio, that's where I am, but the studio is not really about me. The studio is about my community, my clients, the singers that I work with, and they're everywhere. And so I kept talking to, like, you know, the friends and people that helped me with marketing and my website, and they were all like, no, don't change. Nashville Vocal Studio is established. Everybody knows you as that. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, I know you asked it, as far as did I have any trepidation about moving? Totally. I just didn't have time. You know, he got the job. Definitely the best thing for our family. We love Denver so much. We were just here in June this past summer visiting because we love it. I love the mountains, and you know, it's just, but anytime for me, mountains and ocean, I'm a pretty like I run high and I see the ocean, and I just, my body just like, I couldn't run high if I wanted to, in a good way. It's just like, you
Mm.
know, makes me just slow down and be more present. And so we were just here in June having no clue. Then, yeah, he found out in July, and like I said, within 4 weeks we moved. I had a lot of health issues over the fall, so like we found out we were moving, and the next day I had pretty major surgery, and I have had 3 hospital stays since then, since I've been in Denver. So I am now 2024 starting healthy, but it's been a rough, atypical transition.
Yeah.
um, but yes, the studio is now called Evolve Vocal Studio, and I love it so much because I that's what we've done. That's what, you know, that's what we've done as a studio. That's what I hope I continue to do as a person and an artist. That's what I hope my artists continue to do, whether they're evolving, I hope technically, their knowledge of their instrument and their health, their artistry, which is the whole reason we're doing it. And I thought, you know, I kept going back to that, and I thought, why can't that be the studio, Evolve Vocal Studio? So we are still, my associate coach, Eva Cassell, and I have a great speech language pathologist, Brooke Stanifer. They're still based in Nashville, but they do a bunch online. I'm mainly on my online right now, but really I'm hoping to get established to be doing stuff in Denver too. And then I travel to see folks, and but yeah, it's a work in progress. That is for sure. It's an evolution, and that is not just a play on the name. That is literally what's happening, you know.
Well, no, totally. I mean, how do you, when someone has like limiting belief is such a trigger word right now, but really it's just the
Yeah.
scary, right? You know, just the fear of change. Like, how do you walk your art I mean, for yourself as well as for an artist that you're working with when you can see there's a gift that comes with our skill set as a voice teacher is that we can see the potential even when the client may not see it just yet. So when you see those barriers, whether they be mental or as you're navigating and working with your team, be it a vocal health issue or something, what's one of the first things you encourage them to do to be open to the evolution process with change? You know, what's that first, I call it the wet blanket effect, you know, that's going to kind of, you know, put the fire out that's raging within us of,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know.
That's funny. I thought you were, I think of wet blanket as like, let's take the fun and throw a wet blanket on it. But I like, see, that's a perfect example, Melissa, of, see, wet blanket. Like, I think it's like, oh, there's such a wet blanket. And you're like, no, a wet blanket is soothing the fire. I love it. Um, yeah, I'm like, now let my brain go back to the question. I think it's not that simplistic of an answer because every situation is so different. Every person is so different. What I would say is you mentioned mental. Um, I mean, oh my gosh, just singing itself, and performing and putting yourself out there, and there's such a huge mental component. And I know all of us wish. I have so many artists that are like, they would love to pretend that's not there. Trust me, me too. Don't you wish so many times we could, or I wish I could pop my voice out of my body. So when I'm spun up and worrying about things, or when I'm physically sick, when I have COVID, like I had over Thanksgiving, it was a sickly transition, Melissa, but all good. But wouldn't it be great if we were like every other instrumentalist and could be like, let me just pop it out. I'm going to put it in its case. And I feel cruddy, but it's not going to be affected. And that just doesn't happen for us as singers, right? Everything that happens to us physically, mentally, otherwise, everything affects our instrument. And, I believe fully that's why it's so powerful, because it's so human. That's also why it's so vulnerable and stressful. And so I think, like everything, the tricky part comes with this also awesome, great part. And I think when there's a hard time, when there's, like you mentioned, like a vocal health issue, and then I can talk about like a move, whether that's a move career wise, or mine was physical, career, health, all of those things. But I think one, it's to just acknowledge that the way you feel is valid, and to try and I think a lot of us like either feel badly about that or don't like to sit in the feel bad. I'm very much speaking about myself here. So I'm like, no, I feel positive. Everything's going to be great. This is who I am. I'm a positive, optimistic person. And the reality is the core is like, this is hard. I'm scared. I'm sad. And especially because I work with so many singers, whether it's a genuine, like a vocal health issue, a pathology, or I work with a whole lot of touring singers. So it's more like, hey, after 11 shows, my voice is not doing what I need it to do. For all of us, I think, especially for singers, our voice is so much of who we are. It's so much of our identity. But I also think for all of us as human beings, that's how we communicate what's inside of us. So I would say, again, it's not that it's this simple, but one, acknowledging that how you feel is real and valid and is okay. And it would be so great to skip that part, but it's just part of it. And I think when we try to stuff that down and pretend like we don't feel that difficulty, it's like, I don't know if you've ever read that book, The Body Keeps Score.
Yes.
Yeah. If not, you're going to physically get ill. You're going to have a lot of stress. You're going to all of a sudden have vocal tension you didn't have before, whatever that is. So I think it's feeling that. And then, let's come up with a plan to get to where we want to be. So we're not where we want to be right now. Or maybe this is exactly where we want to be, but we don't know what to do here. We're in a new place. So I think you just have to take it like anything in singing, like anything in life, any kind of learning, is you have to take it step by step. So where are we now? Where would we like to be? And let's start to make a path towards that. And then I think when you start to get some of those wins and feel like, oh, well, yeah, okay, I already, even just having I don't know, I'm going back to the vocal health thing, but even like giving somebody like, hey, here's a great way to, just get yourself warmed up, or here's a great way to take care of your voice during the day. Here's a great way at the end. And they usually fairly quickly, it's not saying it's night and day, are like, oh, that feels better. This is easier. And then you realize like there's a light at the tunnel, or you move and I've had all these like, okay, I'm moving. I'm going to do this, and this before Christmas. Oh, I'm going to have everything going. And I was in the hospital for a week in September, October, and November. Oh. I'm fine now. If anybody's, it just did not go. And obviously I had a physical thing, but I swear, I hope this isn't too woo-woo for people, but it's based in science. I really think it's because I was like, no, you're not going to feel that this is hard. You're not going to feel that this is scary. You're not going to feel that this is a dramatic change after over 2 decades. You are going to be positive for your family. You're going to be positive for your business. You're going to be positive for yourself. And my body was like, I'm not feeling that, you know, I'm sickly. And that's when I really thought, Amber, stop fighting this. Like it's okay. You can be um so happy, be like, oh, we're in this gorgeous, beautiful place. It's
Mm.
this whole new challenge, new adventure. I am genuinely so excited about that. And also be like, oh, I'm kind of starting over. I'm going from quite established to, you know, in the city specifically, nobody knows who I am unless they happen to like, you know, watch some videos of mine. But,
Right.
and going from an industry city to a bustling city with a great music scene, but it's not the same, like you said.
Mhm.
So the transition is scary and exciting. And so embracing both of those and coming up with a step-by-step path to be like, I don't have to be at my end goal in a month. That's not realistic. Um, but I just need to feel like I'm making those steps forward. And then I'm like, then more of the excitement comes in. And then when the like stress comes, I go, hey, I see you. You're totally valid. This is what we're doing now. And, you know, I hope that is helpful or makes some sense, but
My gosh,
I think
yeah.
it's something you got to kind of, you're walking through the muck a little bit to get to the lovely sunny place, which is still going to have muck because
Yeah,
that's life, right?
nature.
That's even if the greatest technique ever. If you use your voice a lot, or if you're just a human, you're going to get sick. You're going to be stressed. There's going to be muck there. So coming up with, you know, I set a path, but really tools, and a plan, and just always feeling like you're making those gains towards that. And
Mhm.
if you have a setback, to realize this is part of it.
Yes. How would you say there was one thing in particular that grounded you through the craziness of just the logistics of moving? Everything from, your the logistics of the business moving, logistics of your family moving. And then of course, like you said, your body was like, and we're done. You won't make me stop.
Yeah.
I'm going to force you to stop. But in the midst
Yep.
of all of that craziness, would you say there was one thing that really grounded you, even in the evolving, even in the changing?
That's a great question that I mean, I hadn't really thought about, but you know what I would say is the core thing is, you know, but let's talk about my business and my art and my clients and all that first. The core thing of what I love to do is to sing, to make music, and really more than anything, help other people sing and make music. And to have that, I know I'm in the same company, but I really love just kind of all things voice and music. That was still the same.
Hmm.
The core thing was the same. Lots of stuff was changing around it, but the core of what I love was not changing. And on the flip side, you know, we were telling our kiddos, because our two oldest are in college. Our youngest is a second grader. And he first was like, wait a second. He didn't even fully understand moving, like, but I like my toys and I like me. And we're like, no, you take it with you. And I remember when we were talking to him saying, our family's the same. What we do, how we love each other, the way we play, the fun things we do, that's all the same. We're just going to do it in a different place. And it's going to have new adventures. And we were just out hiking yesterday in the mountains, and truly every time my son's like, I get it, mom, it's beautiful. But I'm just like I hope I'm like this the whole time I'm here. But I just turned the corner and I'm like, oh, it's so gorgeous. So it was wonderful. But I think that's it. And actually that can tie into artistry so much too, is even if you're making you and I have talked about this before, even if you're making a genre change, like let's say you're somebody who has done, you know, pop music, singer songwriter forever. And then you decide, you know what, I'm just getting called to, like, I want to be on the stage in a different way. I think I want to try musical theater, or flip that, or whatever it is. I was a country artist and I don't feel that anymore. Now I feel this call to more Americana or pop music. It's a big change, and all of this around you changes, but the core, your why, the kernel of what you love and what drives you, that's still there. And I hadn't even thought about it. That puts like a tiny lump in my throat, Melissa, because I'm like, that's it. Is that everything else around it can change, but just remembering, like, the thing that anchors me and what I love to do as a person and a professional, my family, all of those pieces of me, that core kernel is the same. It's just learning how to then integrate it into all these other pieces that have changed. And I think if you can be grounded and come back to your why or whatever that is, whether it's, well, it's my family,
Mhm.
it's my love of creating and expressing myself, and you, whatever it is, I think that is pretty key.
Absolutely. So the next big question is, how do you how do you feel, what are you feeling called to now in your own artistry? Now with a change of location, with the evolution of the business, has this caused some sparks for you personally in your own artistry?
It has, yes. And I think it's also, I think it's the move. I think it's kind of the stage and age I'm at in my life. I think it's kind of where my kids are in their lives. You know what I mean? What just feels like it's funny. It's like I have less space, but I also kind of have more space in some ways. Um, you know, I've always, I should say, so I went to college for classical music and had that training all growing up because that was the only option back, in 2 years at University of Missouri. But I knew I wanted to do commercial. So ever since I was at Berkeley, so well over 20 years now, I have solely done commercial music. So, I'll tell people if they come in and want classical, very few people come to me wanting classical, but if they do, I say, hey, can I help you with that? Yes. Is that my zone of genius? Am I the best person? I'm not. I more get classical singers who are looking to come on over to more of the, commercial side.
Sure.
That being said, when I first started teaching, I was probably half and half. I was still performing a lot, my own original music. Gosh, when I lived in the Northeast, and which I was in my early 20s, but I performed in loads of cover bands and cruise ships. Cruise ships, I should point out, not the cruise ship. People will die laughing. It was the boat. It's a cruise, but it's the boat that goes like around the harbor in Boston. I'm not doing like the Royal Caribbean. As soon as I said, like, let me bring it back to cruise ship. But those are like 4-hour gigs of cover songs. And what I started doing, and then just the balance started to shift because I genuinely was like, I love this. And they very much feed each other, I feel like. I think it's a great thing. I know you're a very active performer. And I think to be a teacher that has all the training and the education, and we're always, ongoing learning and knowledge, and have all that piece so that you can work with your artists, but you also know what it's like to be there. I think that's kind of an invaluable combo. But more and more over the years, I was doing more session work. And I still love that session work where it was like, I could go in after a day of teaching with like a crazy curly bun on top of my head and play the voice in a video game, which I love doing that, or a commercial for this or whatever it was. And I'm still wanting to do that. I got an offer right before I left Nashville. I was just like, again, I'm thrilled I'm here, but it was a big shift. And it was like I had my wound, and then they just came and like salt, salt, salt.
Oh
I
no.
asked to, it was a company I'd worked with before that was like, hey, will you be the lead voice in this new video game? It's a company out of France. And then will you hire the singers to come with you, arrange the vocals, and we'll do this. And I was like, oh. So I told them, okay, well, I'm moving in 3 weeks, but I'll fly back. And obviously Nashville's filled with talented people. So they were like, oh gosh, don't do that. We'll hire somebody else. Um, I know. I was like, no.
I know.
But so I wanted, that's one of the great things about session work from that, kind of my point there is I'm trying to set it up here where I can still you can do session work from anywhere. I
Totally.
just didn't have a setup or anything here. So I'd love to do more of that, but I'll tell you, all right. I know you and I were talking about this. It's the first time in a while that I felt like I actually want to get out and on stage. And I really think part of it is me. It's pushing me out of my comfort zone. Cause I'd say it's probably been a decade, Melissa. And I was on some pretty big stages and loved it. But I just, just with my kids and,
Sure.
my son's 8 years old, and my other kids then were like elementary school going into middle school. And also just, I was really happy with where I was at. It was genuinely not a like, oh, I wish I could do this,
Yeah.
but I just can't. I just thought like, nah, I'm good where I am. And then I do some session work here and there for my own jollies. And I love what I'm doing on every level. And I think it's our older kids are in college. We've got our little guy, and we're here in a new city. And I just thought like, again, I have to reestablish myself, or I have to establish myself. But I thought that means I can establish myself however I want.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so I'm working on a set list. And I don't even care. I just kind of want to get out there, because I think part of me is like, oh, well, I mean, coaching is what I love, and it is. But I'm like, part of me is nervous, I'll be honest, to get out there, not behind a mic, but like, again, 10 years older, 10 years later, 10 years. And I'm like, that tells me down to my toes, because I would tell clients of mine that love it and have the talent, but they're just like, oh, I think that's past. That's baloney.
Yes.
That's completely untrue.
Mhm.
So I'm pushing myself to do it. There's also this great theater a mile from my house that is a professional theater. It's paid, it's small, but and I have not done theater. That's where I started, and I love it, but in forever. And I'm working on songs, and I'm going to audition.
Yay!
So
Amber! Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'll keep you updated. And
You're watching
it's
this
not
on
because,
YouTube. My face is like so big from smiling. I'm so excited for you.
and I'm not even, I'm like, I need to reflex that muscle. I would tell anybody else, like, what are you doing? Go do it. And also, again, I think that I can tell I can relate to my singers and clients on like, yes, I've done X, Y, and Z, but I'm like, I haven't gone to an audition like that in a long time. So I can be like, here's the things you need to do. But I thought I need to get out of my comfort zone. I know I'll love it. And
You
so
will.
I'm like, it's time to reignite that, I think it will feed what I do even more, make me an even better teacher. And it's time for me to get out of my comfort zone. You know what I mean? And to like shine in a different way for a little bit. I'm so comfy at this point with like, I'm the voice behind the voice. I'm the person behind. I love to be backstage. You go out there. Woo, I'm so comfy doing that. Let me get you ready. And I'm like, it's kind of been, that's still my passion, but I'm like, it's also a little bit of a security blankie.
Mm.
So I'm ripping it off. And just for the challenge and the joy of it, I want to get out there and use my voice just for me as well.
I absolutely love that. And I know I'm cheering you on. I'm sure all our listeners would be as well, especially if you're listening to this and you're in the Denver area. Now you know. Now you know. Amber,
Shout. Yes. I need
yes.
friends, people. I need friends.
Be Amber's friend for sure. Speaking of, how do we find you? How do we find Evolve? Tell us all the things so that we can get in touch with you.
Oh, yes. So it is www.evolve, EVOLVE, just like it sounds, Vocal Studio. I'm pretty active on Instagram. That is at Evolve Vocal Studio, YouTube, Evolve Vocal Studio, TikTok, Evolve Vocal Studio. Yeah, and people can, any questions or anything like that, it's Amber at evolvevocalstudio.com.
Perfect. And we'll put all that in the show notes as well. Amber, again, I am like, woo, 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 wooing, cheering for you here on the sidelines. I think it's absolutely wonderful. If you're listening to this and you feel like what my grandma would call el tucu tucu in your tummy, like you feel like there's this thing that you just need to go ahead and do. Don't waste the time. Establish your why, just like Amber encouraged us to do. And we are cheering you on. There's nothing wrong with evolving. In fact, it's progression, right? It's about getting better. So thanks for sharing your story, Amber.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And yes, I would say evolving is, none of us stay the same as people. So let's not expect anything else to stay the same. You can, but roll with it. And can I add one more thing, Melissa? I just want to point out, Melissa's husband did my sign for Evolve. That's Cartwright Creative right there. So shout out. You can put that in the show notes too, Melissa. I loved it. I tell everybody, but I'm like, he did that. So my head was covering it up, but we might as well add that too.
Oh my gosh. He's going to love that shout out. Thank you so much, Amber.
Yes.
Take care, my love.
Bye.